Last time we sat like this, it was pre-suspension. Running through the list.
Talk about a day of going down memory lane. Wow, that's been pretty hysterical.
I'm kidding. It was never in the pre-suspension.
No, but where's Bill?
He's at the bar.
He's at the bar. Yeah, Bill used to have to report all my test scores to my mother. Seriously, like I was conditionally accepted here. My first year.
You were accepted conditionally. Yeah. You were in a condition.
I was in a condition, but no, like I had to it was either shit or get off the pot situation. For me, it was like either win or don't. And it was pretty scary.
So let me start us out. Welcome everybody. How are you all doing? Sometimes it's a jazz session more than a symphony. But my name is Jim Griffin. I'm a professor here at Johnson & Wales. And many years ago, I was a professor in the culinary college, and I still teach classes in food and beverage. And this gentleman to my right was a student here back at that time. And it's my real pleasure to introduce to you Chris Cosentino. Many of you, we practiced that, by the way.
Chris paid extra for that.
Chris is somebody I've known forever. We've bumped into each other off and on over the years in different places. And it's such a great joy for the university to have Chris back. As you know, Johnson & Wales Culinary College began its life in 1973. And it was a place that was designed with a vision in mind by a transformative leader who came up with the idea named David Friedman and sold a chancellor at the time named Morris Gavey on the potential for careers in food service. Along the way, the college has grown and it's thrived, but the thing that we forget, perhaps, is that the best thing about the college really is the people. Both the people that teach in the college and the product of the college, people who graduate and leave. And for us as faculty, I've been here since 1989, some of you longer. It's seeing people grow and succeed in ways you never would have imagined. Over the years, this gentleman to my right has exceeded us as an institution with his talent and helped define new categories of the profession in food manufacturing, in artisan production, and in media that we never would have thought possible. And here he is today back home. And he knows what I'm talking about, and he's just gone with it along the way. But it is my pleasure to introduce formally Chris Cosentino for his visit tonight. So Chris, here you are.
This is weird.
It is weird. It is very weird. The times we would sit were not comfortable.
No, I mean, we've had beers offsite since, like when we were in Chicago. We ran into each other in Chicago 3 years in a row.
Yeah, House Square Show.
House Square Show, the NRA show.
Yeah.
And just catching up.
But you started out, Chris, and you were leading into something at the beginning. How did you end up at Johnson & Wales? What brought you here?
I grew up in Portsmouth, but my parents were divorced, so I was half and half, right? I would spend half the time in North Providence, my father's house, and then the rest of the time on Aquidneck Island. So I always grew up around a lot of food. It was my great-grandmother Rosalie. She had a 3-story tenement house in the basement. She would can tomatoes, and I would be the kid that would follow her around with a paper bag to go pick dandelion greens and dandelion flowers and go in the neighbor's yard and pick chestnuts. It was like, who's this weird old lady in my yard? Get out of the yard, old lady. And I'd be the little kid chasing her around with a bag. And it was just always part of what I did. It didn't seem to not be a part of what I did. So if I'm at my father's house, I would go spend time with Rosalie and make pizza or crank the pasta machine. And then I go home to Aquidneck Island, so I'm half English and I'm half Italian. So the English side is Easton's. So if you've ever been to First Beach in Newport, it's called Easton's Beach because my family landed there and founded Aquidneck Island. And my grandparents were very English. It was very much like roasted beast and Yorkshire pudding, or we would have always Sunday supper. And if it wasn't Sunday supper in New England, in my England home, which was with my grandmother in Newport, it was Sunday supper with Rosalie up in North Providence. So it was constant back and forth. And when I was a little kid, we had a garden in the yard. We would go clamming or quahogging, right? And it was always just part of every day. So everybody just instilled this nature of food into me. And it just never, I never knew anything else. So like, there would be Family Feud, and then everybody would sit down at the table, and it would just be like, done, it was quiet. Like there was no more arguing, there was no more BS. And to me, food was like this powerful translating experience because it superseded Family Feuds, politics, religion. It would make everybody shut up and get along. And it was the one thing that was consistent. You know, it was that constant like, okay, I got 3 Ds in my report card, I better make dinner tonight. And I would, and I totally would. And that was my thing, I would like figure it out. I was like, okay, Mom's coming home, I totally screwed up. I got 3 Ds, and I'm gonna get a whooping, I'm gonna get grounded, so I better make dinner. I figured that would like smooth it over. Never really did, I mean, I still got grounded, I mean, I got my skateboard taken away, it was always, but it kind of set a tone. Like I could go out my front yard. We lived on a dirt road, and in front of our house was the ocean. So I could go clamming with my grandmother or blue fishing with my grandfather. And then back when I grew up in Portsmouth, there was still potato fields, you know, and there was farms all over the place. And you know, we'd go running through the cornfields and throw rotten potatoes at each other. But it was still part of that culture.
Now, did you find Johnson Wales on your own? Because you were learning the craft and the passion.
I did. So I was looking around, and it was close enough to home, but it wasn't home. You know, like I could still get back to Aquidneck Island. I considered Aquidneck Island home more than I considered Providence home, and it was just far enough away. But it wasn't so far enough away because I was like, I really don't want to go live in upstate New York. I couldn't have dealt with that. It would have been in the middle of nowhere. And I actually wasn't going to come on the tour.
Why?
It was, I was actually at a skate contest in, down over at Quonset Point. There was like, they built this whole skate park, and there was a huge skateboard contest, and I went there instead. And
instead of your campus tour?
Instead of the campus tour, I got
it served
trouble.
Well.
I got a lot of trouble for not showing up because I'd signed up. You know, you had to sign up for it and had to show up with a parent. And at that time, it was my father because my mom was busy. Like he showed up and I didn't.
Humble
that was good because I had a car and I was like, you know, I'm going to skate contest. This is way more fun. And it was just, I finally ended up coming. I ended up showing up on a weekday, and at that point, it wasn't like a traditional tour. Actually, one of the faculty was a friend of the family, and I got a tour. He was a professor from downtown, and they gave me a tour of the campus here, you know, and that was kind of what set the tone. I mean, it just made sense. You know, I am dyslexic, I have ADD, so it was a hands-on craft, and that's what drew me to it the most. I mean, to be honest, it really sucked that my first trimester was sitting doing cost control. Sorry.
You might have 1 or 2 cost control.
You know, but that's fine. But it was like, that was my first I was like, I'm so psyched. I get to go to school and work with my hands. Like it's hands-on. It's what worked in my brain at that time. And you know, of course, I've showed up, I've been told I'm unconditional acceptance, and I go right into academics, and I'm like, ugh, this is gonna stink. And it was rough, it wasn't easy.
You stayed with it though, and I remember the first time I met you, you were making your way, now you're a year into this thing, well, at least 2 terms. When did you know that this all of a sudden was gonna be the path for you? Did you know your talent, or what?
You know, it's actually funny, if I bust out my high school yearbook, I knew what I wanted to do when I was in high school. I knew what I wanted to do before I left school. I always knew I wanted to cook. It just made sense. It made me happy. It was like I keep saying, it was hands-on. It was like I was able to make something. It's craftsmanship. This was pre-bullshit. This was pre-Food Network. This was pre any of that crap. This was Jacques Pepin, Julia Childs, and maybe once in a while, if I could tolerate, can't cook, which I couldn't really. But those were the foundations for me of PBS. That's really what set a tone. I mean, my house where I lived, we got 3 channels, and one was WGBH, and I got to watch those shows all the time. And when my high school yearbook, it's pretty hysterical. It says, live in a ski town, be an internationally known chef, and I can't remember, there's a couple other stupid comments in there, like every other high school idiot. But I knew that then. I don't live in a ski town, and I'm not internationally known, but I'm doing what I want. And I think that to me was, I stuck to my guns. It's hard when you're driven to want to do something, you have to love it. And I think that when I was at school, the most interesting part for me was the most backwards part for me. The part that I was scared of the most was the part that I relied on the most, which was really not normal. I was so excited to get into the labs, but then when I got into the culinary lab and I'm working with my hands, there were no pictures in the books. Like it was like, all right, here's your blue book. We had 4 of them. Yeah. See, you got the whole family here. Like we all remember the 4 books. They were blue. And you open them up, and it's like there's formulas in there. There's techniques written, and you're looking at it, and half of it for me was backwards. So I'm like, I then had to refigure out how to focus, to function in an environment that wasn't set up for me.
You mentioned before how you facilitated this, and now you're into your program halfway in. And from what I recall you telling me, you were looking at books by Jacques Cosentino.
Yep.
Step-by-step sequence books, books with photos. When you were in my class, I could never figure out how your cooking was so strong, because I knew you struggled to read. And it was only a decade later that I found out you were doing self-study.
It was the only way I was going to succeed. The only way I had the ability to get ahead was to utilize what was the library, but Jacques basically geared us up for success. And I remember watching WGBH, and I remembered watching the step-by-steps and how he went and did it. And it's like, I laughed about it. We were walking through today, and we were talking about the butchery class, and I said, do you guys break down whole animals now? Because when we did it, it was like, okay, you're going to debone the chicken. And I can't remember who the instructor was. Probably can't say that. Can I say that? No, but how he taught us to debone the chicken. Andrew, you might remember this joke. Under the shirt, over the bra, right? Yeah. Remember? That's how they taught us to take apart a chicken.
Yeah, exactly.
I know who the teacher is.
I'm not even kidding. No bullshit. Like, I couldn't do that now. I'd be like, I'd be on the front page of the New York Times. And it's like, it's hysterical to think like that's, and we're like, huh? Looking at the chicken going, doesn't look anything like that. Dying laughing. You have this class. And so then I had to go back. And it's like, well, didn't you read the book? Didn't you read your lecture? And I'm like, yeah, I can read it 100 times, but half it's backwards. So it's like, I go to the library and I remember just like finding, I was like, okay, I gotta find it. A lot of technique and a lot of method.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for those two, I wouldn't be where I am now.
You were in the kitchen. I remember you beginning to transition to being very strong. But I remember your creative side.
I was just a lightning in the ass.
You're lightning in the bottle.
I used to just push on you guys. I mean, that was the thing. I remember days when it'd be like, outside. Kicho, get out of the kitchen.
One of the kindest, gentlest men you'll ever meet, by the way.
I know, but I can't even remember. He kicked our whole class out one day. The whole class. Somebody, well, it was me. I forgot to turn on the fryer at the beginning of the shift. And whoever, somebody would forget to turn on the oven, he'd kick us all out. And he cooked lunch by himself. We'd all have to sit in the window like this, like lost children, can we come in now? We really paid to be here. Can we come in? It was just like, but it really set a precedent. I mean, there's times when I do this now, and I wish Tom, my sous chef, is here. He can tell you I say the same stuff over and over again. It's like those moments were really they were very setting and very important because I needed not. It was almost militaristic back then.
No, it was militaristic.
I mean, go home. Not even in labs.
Get a shave, man.
You got to shave. I'm like, dude, I got a pencil. There's no food here. I'm just doing go. I was like, I didn't have any facial hair anyways. It took me 15 years to grow goatee for crying out loud when I was 22. But, it was such a different time. It set standards. Like, learn to hem your pants, iron your apron, iron your chef coat. And it just set a tone that was, what I think honestly is lost now. And I see it, and I'll say it. I don't care. I think it's been lost in the next generation. I'm not saying people need to be mean. I'm not saying people need to yell and scream. I'm saying people need to be held accountable, and there has to be want and desire to succeed. When we were here, and when I feel very fortunate, like, I volunteered for everything.
I remember.
Everything. Like, I volunteered to dishwash because Julia Childs was having lunch. I just wanted to meet Julia Childs. I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. But yet, I also remember watching that ding-dong football player try to hold the paddle, second week of school, hold the Hobart paddle, and both his arms turn into, rattle cans. I'll never forget. So you have all these things that happen at once, and you're just like, okay, we're going to learn. The adults. Yeah, you remember that?
I remember that. So you eventually became a teaching assistant and a fellow. You actually wound up somewhere in your second year. You broke through, and you were hired amongst many applicants. And some of the others that worked with you are here, Chef Joe and others. Tell us about that. Where were you at that stage in your career at Johnson & Wales?
So that was 92, right? Yeah, right? 92? And actually, Andrea and I had the first, we were working together at J. Wales, when it was still J. Wales, we were on the line together.
That was the best kitchen ever.
Oh my God.
She says that was the best kitchen.
No, it was.
Absolutely.
It was.
Yeah.
We had Frank,
Yep.
Farmer, Beamer, remember?
Right.
Big Beamer, you, Rogo.
Remember Mario?
Mario,
Andy King?
Andy King. I mean, it was a powerhouse. Katrina, I mean.
Chris Santos. That's
Yeah,
right.
Santos.
Yeah.
That's right. Like, it was a powerhouse team in there. And like, I was thinking about it the other day. Like, we would get pummeled.
Yeah.
We got pummeled in that place because it was like, oh, by the way, it's all you can eat fish and chip night. And you're like, I don't want to work the Friday. Like, no. And it's like salad station, all you can eat salads, and you'd have like racks and racks, and you just get pummeled. But at the same time, like, we were extruding our own pasta. That was way ahead of its time for a restaurant. Most restaurants at that time were either hand cranking or they were buying dry. Out of the box. And I remember sitting there with that extruder. I now have the same model at my restaurant. Same one. And I remember buying one at Encanto like 12 years ago when we got one. Everybody's like, do you know how to use this? I was like, yeah, don't worry about it. And it was just like, it taught you muscle memory. We get to break down whole swordfish. Whole salmon, like whole swordfish was huge. I remember that day it took Beamer and Skip to bring it in, two of them. They put it on the table and I was like, dude, that's a big one. And he goes, you want to do it? I'm like, okay. And they were like, okay, here's a scimitar. I was like, holy crap, you guys are just going to let me go to town? They were like, yeah. And Skip's like, I'll stand here and make sure you don't like screw it up. But it was amazing to be a teaching assistant, but actually be responsible for the guest. You're educating your peers, and you're still learning. I mean, it was a power play as a student to get that. I mean, it was a fight. I mean, people were duking it out to get those spots.
It's true. That restaurant, J. Wales, was the first real branded restaurant. It was designed by a very prestigious firm, D. Leonardo International, and it was seen as the future of the institution at the time.
It was crazy.
A group of you that got hired. I remember when you were hired, I think you had turned your hair back to brown by then. In the interview.
Oh yeah.
But many of us knew that the culinary crew at that restaurant was going to be successful.
That was a good time. I mean, we had fun.
So away you go. You're running through those 2 years. You wrap it up here. And now here you are in Rhode Island looking at the future. Where do you land when you graduate? Because I know you have a story right after you leave that really sets the base for your career to come.
Well, sort of. We all graduated. Actually, Andrea has some really funny pictures of all of us together. So does Melvin that night. And then the next morning at 4 o'clock, I showed up for pre-op, 4 o'clock a.m., and had my knee rebuilt. And I was out of commission for 4 months. I blew out my knee in the kitchen right before Thanksgiving in the hotel, and I destroyed everything inside. Everything. I had 2 surgeries leading up just so I could function to graduate to then make it till the end of the year. And I went home and I got stuck on a PT machine, and then I started commercial fishing. I got hired to start repairing nets when I was in my gimp cast. It's kind of similar to this one, but it was for the knee. Yeah. So my fishing captain was one of my neighbors. I went to school with his kids, and he hired me on to go out and repair fishing nets. And then when the doctor okayed me, I went out in the boat and started pulling lobster pots and gill netting and scup potting. And it was a new phase for me to really understand the bigger picture. You know, I was bringing in big fish. It was crazy. I would be picked up at 3 a.m, out in the ocean by 5. And from there, I didn't leave. I left Rhode Island in, I don't know, when did I show up at DC? September, end of September? Yeah, October. So, Kevin Weeks and Leslie had moved to DC or Virginia. They were in Arlington, Herndon, somewhere out there. And I wanted to go work for Mark Miller. And Kevin got a job there first. And I was on the rehab, and I took the train to interview. This is the funny thing. I got an interview through the school to go interview for a sous chef job. What was I thinking? Yeah, I'm qualified. Woohoo! I just graduated culinary school. I can't figure out squat, but I'm going to go be a sous chef. So I go to this interview at, it was like some executive club, right? And I used that to get to DC to interview at restaurants. So they paid for me to take the train. They put me up in a hotel, and I went to their interview, and I did 14 other interviews in 2 days. I jumped into every single kitchen I could. I interviewed at Vidalia with Boobin. I interviewed at Kincaid's. I interviewed at Red Sage. Kevin got me in over there. I was just like, okay, I got to figure this out. I'm going to get as much experience as I can interview. And I went to all the interviews, and then I staged with Kevin at Red Sage, and then I went to the company party. They invited me to the company party, and that's where I met Tatiana. Well, that's the first time we saw each other. And they hired me on the spot at the interview. So I went home, told my mother I turned down a $40,000 a year job for $7.50 an hour, and I proceeded to drive all my crap in a U-Haul to DC, which was the smartest move I ever made.
Because of Tatiana, for sure.
It was a huge leap of faith, because I'd lived in Providence. Providence was the big city growing up in Quincy Islands. Like, hey, I'm moving to the big city. Oh my God, you're moving to Providence. No, even bigger. Boston? That was like the next thing, and it was, I was like, shit, I've never been that far away from home. I had no idea what I was doing. Just put everything in a U-Haul and left. I didn't care. What have I got to lose?
And there you are with arguably a person who changed food service in the U.S. for sure. What was it like with Mark? How did that inspire you?
I mean, Mark is... It's so hard to put words to what Mark is. And I don't think Mark gets enough credit for who he is and what he's done. He changed the way people look not only at restaurants, but at design. Mark took a restaurant and said, you will walk in the door and it will feel like you're there, where I want you to feel like you are there, right? So you walked into Red Sage, you looked up, and there's clouds in the ceiling, and there's silent lightning, silent thunder. Like, boom, you see the light, and there's no noise. You're like, what the hell is that? Then you look at the floor, and there's buffalo coins in the floor, and there's the most beautiful etched glass. Everything in that restaurant was custom to the T to make you feel like you were in the Southwest. And you walked in the door, and that's what it felt like. It smelled like that. Everything about it felt what he wanted you to feel. Now every restaurant in the world tries to achieve that. But he did it in such a monumental way, and I've never seen anything like it.
There weren't many then like it at all.
No, I mean, Wolfgang had done his thing, but Wolfgang was about California. But I mean, Mark Miller embodied the Southwest. It was Latin cuisine, it was Southwest cuisine. But Mark came from Alice. He was the chef at Chez Panisse. He fired Jeremiah Towers. He really created a whole experience for people. Like, he went to Berkeley and studied anthropology.
Yeah.
So everything that I base my whole career on now is based on what Mark taught me, which is you can't create the future unless you know the past. History reigns supreme. The only person that's created anything new in our lifetime is Ferran Adria, and we will never see another to do anything like that again. Because right now, everybody's emulating Ferran and Albert. It was so powerful to sit there and be in an environment that, and I started as a prep cook, and I literally started with grunt work. Like, I would come in the morning and I'd have to travel. I lived in Herndon, which was a 45-minute train ride in. I'd have to be in the kitchen by 7. If I was smart, I'd get there by 6:30. I'd always manage to be at the coffee thing to meet her when she would come and make cappuccinos. Every morning, I managed to pull that one off. And then I started and then I got volunteering for events. And then Mark was like, oh, you can come in my office and look at my books, but you just got to put them back. And that was the moment everything changed. It's like, I go upstairs and I'd have to, hey guys, I'm here. And Tatiana was managing Mark, which was a whole unto itself, like another world. That's like herding cats times 20. And I was allowed, I had to ask permission. I had certain color sticky notes that I had to use. I had to write my name and page, stick it on the outside of the book, put the book back where I found it. But if I wanted to go back to it, I had to put this. I couldn't put anything in the book because it would ruin the binding. It had to be on the outside and back into place, and I couldn't leave it in stacks on the floor because that would mess up with Mark's stacks that he was working on. Everything was particular, but I would sit there for hours on the floor. And her office was right outside, and I would just sit there and read, nonstop, looking stuff up, stuff we'd be talking about downstairs that afternoon. So I worked prep. My shift ended at 3. I'd spend 2 hours in the office. And then every Friday, we'd go cash our paychecks and go get silly drunk on $2 Paps with ribbon pitchers down the street at Dixie Grill next to Ford's Theater. So we used to watch all the kids go in and watch where Lincoln gets shot and drink $2 Paps PBRs.
I remember your wingman, Rolando Robledo, telling me you were working at Red Sage, and the first thing I thought was you were going to blow your knee up again. But that didn't happen. You stayed with it, and you kept moving. Take us now between Red Sage and this, what I think was really where I started noticing you at Encanto. You kind of had this stretch in between that led to this thing in San Francisco that really became so important.
So it got to a point at Red Sage. We were dating. I was very fortunate enough to work with a couple people that came through. Robin Haas came through, and they Mark Miller opened up the first Asian noodle concept restaurant. Everybody likes to give David Chang the ramen credit. I'm sorry. Mark Miller opened a restaurant called Raku. It was the first noodle bar in the United States that specialized in ramen, right? And it was in DuPont Circle, and I worked with Robin Haas, and we developed all the recipes together. And that was like boom, a whole other chunk of food's just like, I'm swallowing up all this information. I'm going to Chinatown and I'm doing that. And then Raku opened, and then I wanted to leave. I wanted to go do something different. So then I went over to Kincaid's, and I worked with Bob Kincaid, who was a New Englander through and through.
Great chef.
And we were doing like 580 covers a night. I mean, it was brutal. Like wood-fired grill. My station had 18 dishes on it off the grill. I was getting pummeled every night. And one day I came home and I was like, well, we gotta go somewhere else. And at this point, I'd already volunteered to do everything. Like Mark Miller had taken me to the Beard House twice. I'd done City Meals on Wheels at Rockefeller Plaza in New York. I mean, I volunteered for everything. Mark said jump, I said how high. Because that to me was like, okay, if I'm gonna get anywhere, I'm gonna be it. I'm gonna just be the slave. I didn't care. I remember Mark cooking for Sony. He burnt the rice, and the Japanese guys thought it was smoked, so they thought it was brilliant. And we went with it. And Mark looked at me and he goes,
Yeah.
like it was amazing because he was going to be in the Metreon doing Raku concept. So it's like there's all these moving parts, like, and we were always hearing about Loom Bar, Loom Bar, Loom Bar, Mark's Asian restaurant dream to be back in San Francisco. And it was always just talk, San Francisco, Berkeley, San Francisco. We moved on. I went to Kincaid's. I was there for 9 months. And at one point, I was like, where are we going to go? Like this is, at that point, there was no Jose Andres in DC. It was actually the sous chef at Aleo.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't want to work for Yannick, and I don't want to work for Roberto Donna. I want to go. And we had this conversation, and I'd never been to San Francisco. Tatiana had, she's like, I've been, it's really cool. And I was like, okay, let's go. All the boxes of produce were coming in that said California, all the wine, Sonoma, Napa. And I was like, all right, that's where everything's coming from, so let's just go. And again, pack everything up in a U-Haul, drive across country, straight out. She had a job, I didn't. And we got there, and I was fortunate enough to score a very short stint at China Moon.
Oh, really? Great place at the time. Transformative in the U.S.
I would say that Barbara introduced the United States to real Chinese food.
She was visiting us then too.
She was above and beyond. And I had applications out everywhere, and Robin was trying to introduce me to George Marone to go work at Aqua, and eventually, and then he ended up being at One Market. So I got to San Francisco. I started working at China Moon. My first job was a cook staff meal. That was like their test. But like at that time, getting a job in San Francisco was hard. Like it was no joke. Like it was like, okay, you're gonna stage for 2 days. I want to see you do this. I want to see you do this. Now it's like, do you have a pulse? Do you have a record? You don't have a job? Okay, you don't have a record. Okay, good. We'll hire you. It's like, can you please come back tomorrow? It'd be really nice to have you back for more than, first day. So, I'm at China Moon and I get the job, and, my first official paid day, I make goop, which is the fermented black bean chili paste. And I'm making it in like the 15-gallon batches. So like my skin's red, my eyes, I'm like burning everywhere. And day 7, Barbara got re-diagnosed with cancer.
Yeah.
She fired me.
Yeah. She showed us how to cure a walk. She walked in.
Oh yeah.
And she took the walks, and this was the same. We used to throw you out of the kitchen, and she moved them aside, took one, and said, "Let's start from the beginning. Don't forget it." So I didn't know you were with her.
That was a big one. She fired me and said, "You need to go someplace where somebody's going to work with you. I want you to work with somebody." So I went to One Market, and I worked there for a brief stint with George Marone, and I just found it wasn't my fit. It wasn't the right job. And lo and behold, I went out drinking one night, which is all cooks we do. Ended up at Lucky 13, and in walks Paul Lemieux. So Paul was he was one of the line cooks then, and he said, "Oh, dude, we're hiring for hot apps. You should come over." And I was like, "All right, I'm in." Showed up the next day, and Paul got me in. I got hired right before Thanksgiving. We'd only been in San Francisco at Rubicon.
Wow.
So I worked with Tracy Desjardins and Paul Lemieux, Elizabeth Faulkner. The line was star-studded at that point. I mean, it was Richard Reddington. It was a powerhouse, you know, and Robin Williams was our owner. Bobcat Goldthwait would come in. I mean, it was crazy. Like, it was nuts. Like, who would come in? John Cleese would come in the kitchen and stand in the dish sink and start, you know, screaming and yelling. And I'm working the grill, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, I just gotta go. I gotta get this done. Tracy's gonna kill me. And it was such a cool environment to be in. And Tracy nicknamed me. It stuck forever. And, you know, now, you know, I was there for 2.5 years. And then I moved from there to Martha's Vineyard. We packed up and moved out to Martha's Vineyard. We were there for a year, and then moved back. Straight back to San Francisco after 1 year. Living on an island is rough.
Yeah, I spent time in the vineyard. That's a good one-time experience.
Oh, no, it's not. It's great for a great vacation. It's not good for work.
Yeah.
So I was there. I opened up a restaurant there for Drew Newport as the chef of the restaurant. It was called the Coach House. And then we were in the Harborview Hotel. Did that for a year, moved straight back to California as fast as we could. We spent 1 month in France. We toured all around France. And I remember knocking on the door of a Boost with all my gear. Had to take a cab there, like pre-Uber, you know, super expensive cab. Don't speak any French. Knock on the door with a chef coat and all my gear, and they look at me and they go, "No." Turn around, take the cab back. We ate all over Lyon, and we head into London. Knock on the door at Harvey's. I'm like, I'm gonna work for Mark. I'm gonna start for Mark up your way. This is gonna be amazing, right? Opens the door, fuck off. Boom! Slugs the door in my face. I was like, oh.
He still does that.
He still does. But then I was fortunate enough to get a stage at La Tante Claire with Pierre Kaufman.
Oh, you're a Pierre Kaufman.
So I spent a few days with Pierre, which was, I mean, you can all blame him for the pig's feet. I mean, it was all him. He put me in the basement. He was a very grumpy man at that point. Put me in the basement, handed me 2 boxes of pig's feet. He said, "No holes." Yeah, shut no holes. And he comes over and he does a demo. 5 seconds. Done. But can you do that again, Chef? Done. Okay. So then I'm doing it. And he comes back, he's like, 20 minutes. None. I'm sorry, Chef. It's new. It's very frustrating. And then a cook called out. And then he put me on the line. So I do lunch service, which is cool because I was just entremet. I would just make sure their veg were right, pass it over. And on that line was like Angela Hartnett. It was like Tom Kitchen, like some really heavy hitters. And I had no idea. They were super chill. They were all line cooks. And I was just like, where do you guys want me? I'll do whatever you want. And then the ducks come in. And this was like a pivotal, like, I'll never have this experience again. He was like, okay, come on. I go out back, and there's paraffin, and I have the kid dipping ducks in paraffin. Boom, boom. It's like soapy water, paraffin, ice water. And he's like, okay, pluck. 25 ducks, plumage. Don't tear the skin. Yes, chef. And then I pass them off, and all the chefs start breaking them down. And each chef, it's turned into like, you know, that one job, just like Ford, you know, it's the conveyor belt. One guy, one job, one guy, one job. He's taking off the legs, this guy's pulling all the guts, and then they stop. And the guys are about ready to pull out the guts, and they're foie ducks. They all have the foie lobes in them. I've never seen it, and all I've ever seen is lobes of foie, right, in the restaurant. I'd seen them everywhere, we'd served them everywhere, and then it's like, the chef stops, and he looks up, and he's like, come here, come on. My eyes are like this big. And he takes his hand and he pulls out everything, guts and all, pulls everything out, and then there's a little flaw. And he was like, okay, it's your turn. And I was like, well, I didn't. He's like, don't ask me again. Yes, chef, I just get right in there. And I did exactly what he did. And that was like, boom. And then it went right into dinner service. So it was like, whoa, like you guys get 24 ducks a week, and that's where they get all their flaw, all their duck for the menu, and they rotate through it all. And that was like that, okay, you get one thing, and you use everything, and you rotate through it all. That was another, boom. Another like, okay, file that one away. It's like, I still have all my notebooks from everywhere I've ever been.
You still cook that way. I mean, your style now is so defined by approaching food, proteins in particular, broadly.
I mean, it just kept getting from there, you know, you come back, and then I opened alone, it was a French brasserie, and then got hired by Michael Meany, opened a couple restaurants with him, for him, and then I quit cooking. I said, I don't want to do it anymore. My hair was literally like, I'd opened Nob Hill at MGM Grand, and then I came back and did Nob Hill, and then they sent me down to Laguna to open another restaurant with the media group. It was like all within 6 months, and I was just coming unglued. Like I couldn't even focus anymore. I was just like, and at that time I was racing for fun. I was racing my bike, and an opportunity came to the table, and I had the opportunity to turn pro as a cyclist. And we had the conversation, and I quit.
And how long was that? What was that span, time-wise?
About 1 year.
Really? Is that about right?
No, because you were mercenary chefing.
Oh, that's true. I was a mercenary chef.
You're a little mercenary.
Yeah, I became kind of the gun for hire. Like whoever needed help, I just did whatever. Like I ended up getting.
You didn't have a real job.
I didn't have a real job for a year. I raced. I worked for the farmers at the farmers market. I would work for cash and food, and I would ride my bike to wherever the market was. Sometimes it would be all the way out in San Rafael. So it's like a 35-mile ride out and a 35-mile ride back, but the market starts at 7 a.m., so it's an early start and a pretty cold ride. And let it be known I had a single-speed bike. So I was racing a one-speed mountain bike.
So you're rounding 70 miles to go to the pros run?
Yeah, and I would come back with a backpack full of food. And then I was kind of gun for hire at all these different restaurants. And then I kind of bopped around. You know, I helped the gin grasses at Hawthorne Lane. I worked at Chez Panisse for a stint with Christopher Lee in the dining room downstairs. And then Bellone opened. Then one day I got a phone call, Bellone closed, but then the chef moved over to another restaurant. And I said, okay, I'll come and help you. And it was a stint where I stopped racing, needed to get back to work. And he's like, listen, I need somebody to supervise my sous chefs. I can't pay you as a sous chef, but can you like monitor him? I'll pay you as a line cook and a butcher. I was like, yeah, sure, I'll do whatever you want. So I started working with the Kimpton group, and then they started shipping me off to help at other properties, and I ended up in Aspen for a couple months. And that's when the phone call came for Encanto. I got back. I go back to the Kimpton Hotel, and they said, well, thanks for all the help. You saved 4 of our properties. We're going to fire you now. Thank you. And I was like, oh, crap. So what am I going to do? And they gave me a couple weeks to find a gig. And lo and behold, Easter Sunday, Paul, who was at the time the chef at Grand Cafe, got the phone call. I went. And I did a stage, and I was at Encanto for 12 years.
Well, it took off.
12 years.
But some good things happened in there that...
It was amazing. I mean, I was given complete and utter free reign. I
it was
mean,
the first time you had full free reign, right? To that extent?
To that extent, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I wasn't an owner. I was never a partner, but I was given 100% free reign. I could do whatever I wanted with the menu. I could choose to put whatever I wanted on. When I got there, they were not even making pasta. I started making pasta. Then we got an extruder. It took me 1 year to get an extruder. But it was crazy. I mean, it was just full blown go. Right off the get-go.
Now, parallel to this, you're swimming along, and the story is one that always has been for you, of never having it easy. You've never had it easy from the first day I met you. However, the lesson I've always learned from you, which is even more so today, is how hard you work and persevere in the face of more challenges than most. So you're doing this, and Tatiana's by your side. This food media thing is being born in the US, and you're percolating over here. And you've had a lot of things happen in the media side. You've made clear in your publications that you've spoken in, and even in some video that you've done and posted, how you feel about media. However, one could argue your media career was meteoric too. How did all that play out?
Yeah. TV's kind of a catch-22 for me, and media as a whole. Kind of like that you love it and you hate it kind of a thing. And at that time, Mario was on the rise with Molto Mario, and it was just amazing. You're looking at what he's doing, and I was like, this is cool. Real food. But what was funny is that we had the only U.S. Iron Chef winner as of Ron Siegel living in San Francisco, right? So and that's just, I'm talking we as in like the whole Rubicon Kitchen team, Tatiana, and every other restaurant every Sunday would pile into this Japanese bar with Japanese TV where there was no subtitles to watch Iron Chef Japan because nobody was showing it yet. And it was amazing. Like being from a competitive nature as an athlete, I had that competitive nature, and it was like watching it was like, oh, Batolettes. Yeah! We're like, holy shit, they're gonna fight out over Romaine. This is the coolest thing ever. And we would sit there and we'd look at the bartender, translate, come on, translate. And there's like broken English translating what the hell's going on, and we're buying all the cheap Asahi, and the guy's just like, oh. Then it ended up becoming a thing, which is like starting to get packed. And that's how it started. All I wanted to do was compete on Iron Chef. That's all I ever wanted. I wanted that so bad. I was sending, like, Bruce Seidel at that time was in charge. He was the one who brought it over, and I would send Bruce, like, all these letters, like, Bruce Seidel, I really want to, and I'd send files and all this crap, and I didn't know what the hell I was doing. Like, I didn't have marketing, I didn't have PR, it was me trying to get on, right? And then it happened one day. Like, I got the phone call, and I was like, uh-oh. Oh shit, we're really going. And at that time, it's like I didn't have a super big team, and I borrowed some friends, and we ended up going, and we lost Battle Garlic by 1 point, which stunk. But that being said, it ended up was the catalyst. It just kind of rolled from there. Because of that, then they asked me to be on Next Iron Chef, and then from Next Iron Chef came Chef's First City with our own.
It was a good, it was fun to watch with you guys.
It was fun, but I ran our own trotted, let's be honest, our own trotted, okay? Our own can't eat chilies either. His mom called him a weenie because he couldn't eat chilies. But, it ended up starting to feel like I was the bully.
Oh.
I felt like the bully in high school picking on the freshman kid. It's like, hey, so nice to meet you. I'm so excited to be here in Seattle, and I'm ready to kick your ass. That's not cool. And that's what it started to feel like. I was going to all these towns, and these chefs are talented in their own right. They're doing really cool stuff. But I have to go to town and beat them down.
It's not your style.
And it really started to feel bad. It's like, but I was so competitive, like, I'll outrun you. Like, yeah, I read more. And it's like, it was fun. Like, some things were really cool, but it ended up really taking its toll.
Did you ever think you would win Iron Chef? Top Chef the way you did?
Top Chef Masters was different. Like, I had given up TV 100%. I was done. I swear to God I wasn't going to do anything else. And I got a phone call to do Top Chef Masters. And we had a family huddle, and it was like, do I do this? Do I not do this? Like, I swore TV off. Like, I don't know if this is a good idea. Like, because TV put me in a worse place than a lot of people realize. And to kind of give you a little synopsis, I ended up getting third-degree alkaline burns in my stomach that burned a hole through my stomach into my abdomen. I became very sick for a very long period of time. From that, there has been long-lasting effects that will actually not go away. Stress-induced. It's not stress-induced. It's your stomach is what produces all the chemicals your brain needs to function, right? So your stomach produces serotonin, melatonin, all those things you really need, and mine stopped. It's done, and it won't. So because I eradicated the nerves in my stomach, because it was so damaged, once my stomach was healed and I wasn't sick in that way, then everything else started to pile on. And it really created bigger problems. And there's still problems I deal with now every day. I mean, I have to deal with mental health issues because of an injury. And that was the big catalyst. Do I sit down and do I do this show? And what it boiled down to was there's no drama, it's not petty, it's cooking, and it's charity. And I picked my charity, and it was at a place, like I'd been to Vegas, I knew Vegas because I'd already opened a restaurant there for Michael, Mina at the time. It was a new hotel, the hotel was really cool. And I said, yeah, why not? And we did it, and it was 5 weeks of intense. I mean, we had fun because, they would take our phones away during the event and during the day, and then at night we'd go back to check with our family and our restaurants. But yeah, we could go out dancing, and we would go out to all these fancy dinners, and then they took us zip lining. I got to go drive a Ferrari on a racetrack. I mean, it was pretty cool. We did bumper cars, we did laser tag, we did everything. But it was really ultimately about, I'm going to cook. Yeah. I'm not going to play the game of what you see on Top Chef, which is,
We were watching you at the final round. I've known Kerry for a while, but I would say the whole of Johnson and Wales was glued to you. And I was going to text you, but I figured if we did, it would just make you more nervous. It turns out you didn't have your phone. But,
well, what's funny is that was filmed a year prior to it coming out. We waited a year for that, and that was brutal. And the best part was my son knew the whole time and didn't say a word.
Wow.
He kept a secret. It was cool. I mean, the whole thing for me was, it was for Parkinson's. Like, that was it. Like, I'm there to win money. And if I'm going to win money, I'm going to put everything out there. And it's like, okay, everything is about making the best dish, and I'm feeding. And you know what? It's no different. Everybody makes those shows out to be like, it's impossible. It's not real. And I'm like, dude, you deal with it every day in your restaurant. What's the difference? Right? The dish machine's broken. Juan doesn't show up to work garmage. Jose didn't show up today, your butcher, with all your meats. Like, you figure it out. And that's the same thing on tea. It's just, okay, I'm sitting on the side of the Grand Canyon. It's a pretty fucking cool view. It's better than my kitchen in the basement right now. So I'm looking over the Grand Canyon, and I'm standing next to the Wallapai tribe, and I'm working with indigenous ingredients. Isn't that what we all dream about? Isn't that our life goal in our industry, to cook and work with cool people and meet people and make people smile? Like, I just got to do it on a different stage every day. It was like, okay, I'm working on teppanyaki. I never eaten at Benihana, not even as a kid, but that was fun. And it's like, you learn something new every moment, and it's like, the measure of your success is how you learn to deal with problems. And that's all it was. It was just a new problem.
And I'll say this, a good education is one that helps you solve problems like that. Mm-hmm. Not to dice an onion or to plate a dish, but how to deal with life challenges. And we're slowly running out of time here, but
I had to get together, I'm sorry.
Very important lessons, but what do you think now? We had a quick side trip, and we'll wrap this up quickly, but we had a quick side trip in the hallway.
Oh man.
Roommates walked by your old freshman dorm room. Chef Roblito was here. You had to take off for a couple of minutes, but how do you feel being back? We'll close with a quick set of thoughts about what it means to be back here.
It's totally different. I mean, I'm like, I feel like I'm in Star Trek right now. We went from rubbing sticks together and rocks to now it's Star Trek, and I'm pushing a button, and like all of a sudden it's going to come out, and I'm just waiting for the Trouble with Tribbles episode to happen at dinner tomorrow. But it's so amazing to see the change, and I mean everything evolves, right? Everything in life evolves, but. Having not been here for so long, I didn't even recognize it. The only thing I recognized was, the dorms are still the same thing, except for there's like 20 more over there, and there's a new building over here, and this looks different.
There's only one bed in the room.
Yeah, that kind of actually rubbed me the wrong way. I'll be really honest.
One bed.
You guys have rooms with one. We had 4 in those rooms. It was a little awkward and really smelly though. But it was so cool to actually be there and walk down the hall and just laugh. Like, oh my God. Like the memories that are here are really powerful. And I think, the memories in this building, I used to have lunch with Chef Louis Sassmere downstairs. Like that to me was that was so cool. Like he shared so much information. Remember him talking about eat butter with radishes. Like that was his thing. It's like he lived upstairs and everybody was kind of like, oh, who's Santa Claus? Like, who's that jolly dude? And it was like, it's those things that just come rushing back. It's like the labs totally are different. I mean, I just, I didn't know what to think. I mean, I worked with something today. It actually scared the daylights out of me, that pressure cooker. We could have climbed in it, Jeff. It was so huge. That was the biggest pressure cooker I've ever seen. But it's amazing, and it's like you want to see the excitement and this energy for this next generation of culinarians, like reaching for their goals. And it's like putting in the effort, going for it. And that's what I'm excited to see most. Tomorrow should be pretty interesting because I remember sitting in it was in the gym we used to do the DVCs.
It is, yes it is, with the rolling line.
With the rolling.
Temporary.
Yeah, we used to roll everything out.
24 years later you're here, you've exceeded us. You're a graduate now who has elevated yourself to inspiring us. Many of us who know you know your story, what you've struggled with physically, public about mental health challenges, your commitment as a dad, your inspiration for us, for me, is exceeded in how you fundraise and how much giving you engage in, which is so scarce today. So you to take the time to come back, this is your home, always will be your home. Your face will always be part of our community, and we can't express how much we appreciate you taking the time to come home. And I hope you enjoy the next 2 days. It's amazing to have you and your lovely wife Tatiana here, and you will always be part of the JWU family. Thanks for this past hour, for coming up. We appreciate it. To close us up, I'd like to bring up Lori Zabata, who's just absolutely amazing in her role in Alumni. Lori's gonna.
You got autocrat in there?
He wants a little coffee milk.
Coffee milk.
I'm Lori Zabata, Director of Alumni Relations, and I just wanted to thank you so much for being here. Honestly, this was such a wonderful session, wasn't it? Please, one more round of applause. It's not weird. It's not weird. You're totally at home here. This is great.
It still feels weird. It's just me.
Well, as a small token of our appreciation, I have just a little something for both of you. Jim, you are always amazing to help us out like this. And Chef, this is for you to always, obviously Rhode Island is your home.
How did you get the rocking chair in here?
I just folded it up. Yeah. So Rhode Island is always your home because this is where you're from, of course. But to know that
oh my God.
That Johnson and Wales also that's really the center of your state right there. So I love to give that gift because it's totally functional. Just load it up with some cheese, absolutely.
Load it up with cheese.
You could use it as a gun.
Like I'm use it as a gun. I'm just trying to figure out where I am.
Yeah. So always know that you have a spot here with us. We hold you close in our heart as a graduate, but certainly Rhode Island is your home, and we'd love to have you back as many times as you'll come back. We would love to have you. Tatiana, thank you so much for sharing your time with us too. We really appreciate it. For those of you who watched on Facebook Live, thank you so much for being here. Those of you who joined us tonight, we really appreciate it.
Awesome.
But you were good.
So we invite you all now.
We didn't touch on anything from before.
Oh no, it's all good.
We invite you all now to really enjoy the rest of your evening here with us. Enjoy some snacks. Visit with Chef and with Dr. Griffin, and certainly with the rest of us here. Thank you so much for all being here. Enjoy the rest of your evening.